Good morning, everyone. Can I welcome all members and officers to the Healthier Communities Overview and Scrutiny meeting. Just to confirm, as a council, we welcome the use of the Welsh language within our public meetings, but I can confirm we've not received any notifications to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. May I remind you that the meeting is being webcast, therefore please turn off your mobile phones and ensure you speak clearly into the microphones. I can also remind all members to sign the attendance register and confirm if any apologies have been received for this meeting. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Len Constance and Sue Molson.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make?
Bodypool College, is that there?
Oh, I have as well.
Is that
Studying care courses? Or...
Sorry? Yeah, he's on a course, yeah. Bricklaying course. No. No.
I've got an interest. I'm a student nurse at the University of South Wales.
I don't think it's any personal or prejudicial interest, but one of the guest speakers is on the governing body that I'm on, and I'm not sure who the doctor is until I meet him.
Okay, those are noted with thanks. Moving on then to agenda item number 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we move that they are true and accurate record of the meeting? Second. Thank you. Item number 4, if we can ask Becky to go through the action sheet, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you all see from the action sheet, all the actions have been completed other than the responses to recommendations, which you will now have received, members. I've emailed those out this morning. So if you do have any comments or feedback on any of those responses from the last meeting, just let me know. I can pass those on to Jill.
Thank you for that. Agenda item number 5, the bulk of today's meeting. We'll invite the officers and attendees into the meeting now. Well, we'll get going. Thank you for attending today. It is appreciated. If I could ask you just to do a quick name and role introduction for the purposes of the webcast, and then we'll look to David to do a summarisation of the report that we have in front of us before we begin the questioning process. Thank you.
I'm David Williams from the Gwent Regional Partnership Team.
Professor Paul Edwards, from Associate Medical Director of the Nairn University Health Board.
Okay, and thank you again for attending today. If I could ask then David to take us through the report, just a brief overview, and then we'll start the questioning session.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hopefully, can people hear me all right? Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for inviting us today to the opportunity to explain a little bit about what we're trying to do. This is actually very much predicated on the fact we need to look at how we get more of a sustainable workforce across health and social care going forwards. So the introduction gives you a bit of a background as to having that workforce, the importance of frontline delivery, some of the impact factors, because direct care staff in domiciliary care and residential care have been an unregistered workforce, but under the introduction of RISCA, they will be registered, and so that's putting a little bit more pressure in some respects on the sector, but it also means that we need to be looking at the preparation for young people and making sure that any courses prior to coming into work line up with the new requirements around registration. So we've taken this approach of actually coming together, working across health and social care to develop a career college consortium approach, working with the existing providers, of which Colleague Gwent are the main one, but others, as we've said, such as Torvine Training, and recognising the holistic nature of this is also looking at those workforce programme initiatives such as Bridges into Work. So this is not just looking at young people, this is actually looking at people as a whole, having the opportunity to train, prepare, understand better the opportunities that exist across health and social care. And one of the things we've picked up, for example, is that there isn't really a lot of awareness, or there's lots of myths around the kind of jobs. Paul would be able to tell you there's a huge range of job opportunities within health using different skills, and we need to make sure young people are aware of those. So that's the kind of background to this, and so it's really that question at number one: how can we proactively develop career pathways in the care sector for a sustainable workforce in Torvine? Obviously, I would emphasise this is Gwent as a whole, but obviously you've asked us sort of what's happening in Torvine, and in fact we're centred in terms of working with Keith and the Ascot Pontypool campus, but we are working right across Gwent. I would like to emphasise that from the outset. At 2.1 you'll see that actually students undertaking health and social care courses are the biggest single subject cohort. There's a lot of people, 300 plus, and we see very, very few of those actually coming into social care in any of the local authorities, I think it's fair to say, or the health board. So we would feel we really need to try and address that and give people that kind of opportunity and understanding. There are a number of reasons: lack of awareness, as we've said, perceived reluctance to employ staff, a whole number of things. There's also a bit about the fact we've not really been doing a great deal of tracking, of understanding necessarily where students are going. And we need to perhaps pool our resources to try and do that so that we can work much more effectively. There have been surveys in terms of staff turnover, and we've shared a little bit of information in relation to that. But I think we see as key giving good information and engaging the providers of care to present to students, because there's nothing better than that direct first-line contact, to actually ask the nurse, what is it like? To actually ask the care worker, what is it like? And we've seen from the experience that we've had, which I noted at 2.6, we've done some work working with primary schools in terms of doing exactly that. So you probably will have seen the Billy the Superhero launched, and I was asked to bring some copies, so they are here for that. And one of the things that the teachers fed back was actually when they've heard somebody, they remember the name, they remember who they were, what they were talking about. It stays with people. So part of the approach we're taking is trying to look at it holistically, from schools through to college, through to actually employment, and people wanting to come back into employment. We've highlighted the fact we need to do some tracking through the FE courses. We've highlighted that there's an opportunity and a desire, I think, from across health and social care for the input from professionals to be there, to take some of the questions, to mentor, support, take placements. We see that there's some anecdotal evidence noted at 3.2 that sometimes parents may seek to dissuade children going into that because it is seen as quite low paid and unskilled. And what we're trying to highlight is actually there are some real opportunities for pathways and progress. you know, we were just talking outside and we can think of many examples from ourselves where people have actually perhaps started off maybe working in a residential care setting, a domiciliary care setting, maybe part-time in school holidays, but then they've actually then gone on to train and they know they've been enthused, and many have gone into management roles now as well. So we know there's a change with the introduction of registration and core competencies and professionalising the workforce, so we need to make sure that the career information that young people get is very much up to date and gives them the right information. And we know that this needs to be reflected in the further education courses, and hence we really should be working with the further education providers. You know, and I have to say it's been an open door in terms of this kind of approach. There's a national recruitment and attraction and recruitment campaign that was actually launched just last week on the 5th, and we had a regional launch event on the 7th, and that was an opportunity for the frontline staff to sort of share some of their stories. And we've already capturing some of those, and that will be part of putting that information in front of people and giving people real-life, face-to-face examples of what people actually do and what brings them into it, what motivates them. So we see that this is really a kind of win-win opportunity for all the partners coming together. If we get it right, as we've said here, then we should actually see more local young people coming into locally based employment. We know that the care provider organisations, the health board, social services, all need people coming in, and you know, so why wouldn't we do this? Is really what I would say. We see that it actually addresses a number of the key aspects of the well-being of future generations, particularly around social and economic. We see that this is a real opportunity around social inclusion and equalities, because one of the things that we've picked up is that it can be a bit patchy. There are some very good bits of practice where we've had health board staff providing mentoring experience, going in and talking to schools, but it is very patchy. We need to coordinate this, I think, very much better. There aren't really any financial implications. This is actually something that's been supported fully by the Regional Partnership Board, who've endorsed the use of some integrated care funding to help support an employment officer. And again, that's been an example of collaborative working, because Keith and a colleague from Social Care did an interview panel earlier this month, and we're pleased to say we were successful. So we have somebody who's due to be starting at the end of this month. We see that it also needs to tie into the kind of wider workforce considerations, and Keith chairs the Regional Workforce Development Board for Health and Social Care, so the connectivity is there. We see that we need to do some marketing communications, getting information out there to students, and particularly within careers colleges, we need to be proactive about this. So we see that there's a good medium to long-term benefit of everybody working together, and that we would see an impact in terms of more young people coming into jobs in health and social care, and hopefully progressing, you know, and actually getting good advice, good information. So we've brought together a range of partners in this Career College Consortium approach, from the Health Board. So Paul from the medical side has been really helpful to have on board. We've also got senior nursing and people involved who are aware from workforce development. We have from the college around a number of different departments, from social care, from the operational and management side, and also from some of the workforce side as well. So, and I'd leave it to colleagues to say, but I think it's probably fair to say that there's a very positive buzz in terms of this work. You know, we all feel really enthusiastic and positive about this. So I hope I've given you a bit of an overview of this, and obviously here for any kind of questions and things, because we see this is a really exciting opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I struggle to disagree with anything you said. I think there's an overwhelming feeling from the scrutiny, and I'm talking perhaps on behalf of everyone here, that we want to see the social status of our carers elevated as high as possible. The work they do is invaluable, and we certainly struggle as a council without them. So we're keen as a scrutiny to do what we can to aid in the professionalisation of the care sector, to make sure that they feel valued as individuals and are well supported. And the questions that we have, I think, focus around that. So moving on then to the questioning session, what I'd like to do is open and ask, can you expand on what you mean by short to medium and longer term activity to address future needs? And supplementary, at what point are we going into schools to teach about the care profession?
Okay. I think in terms of short term, one of the things that we've done has been actually producing this book with children, which has been really important. So we're in the process of, this book is now in every library in Gwent. We've been to all the library services. We're in the process of taking it out into schools. As far as possible, we're using people to take it into schools, if people have got a link to do that. And we're also looking to make sure that it goes out to all the GP practices. So that's one of the actions we're doing in the short term. I think the second thing I'd say in terms of the short term has been actually looking to recruit somebody that we can actually start to look at the information, to actually look at the numbers of students and how we can do that, what already exists. And then that will be leading to a medium term and longer term, so we actually start to have a bank of people from across health and social care who are happy to contribute to and attend courses. One of the things to say in relation to there's a covering letter that's gone out with this, and it offers the schools and said, look, if you want somebody from health and social care professional to come and speak and read the book, etc., then get in touch with us. We'd be very happy to arrange it. So that's a couple of things, but my colleagues may have other things to add.
Just thinking about the medium term, we'd really like to see, or in fact we're working on plans to develop a lot better advice and guidance, really. As a college, we don't actually want to sell individuals a course, we want to sell them a career. So we really want to sit down with colleagues around the table and make sure that learners get really good, sound advice and guidance, and as quickly as possible get exposure to the industry, so they get a work placement almost within their first week, as opposed to having an induction in the college. I'd rather they went out into the industry, got an understanding of what that's like, and then from there on in, just building up a whole range of opportunities for learners to have work experience, for professionals to come into the college and talk realistically about work. And I think that's a medium-term objective for us.
I think I can come in there as well, Chair. I think workforce has been something I've always been very interested in, and I think that's demonstrated by the fact that in Torfaen we're always able to recruit and retain our staff, because we put a lot of store by that. 30% of our current workforce we've put through the professional training, so that's quite a high number. And of course they're local people and they stay local. And you know, we've got, so I was saying to colleagues earlier, they've got some good examples where we've promoted those people as well over the years, so they stay. And I think not only do they stay and do a good job for the council, but they bring something to the community in terms of they're earning money and they're putting money back into the community. So I think there's a win-win. So for me, you know, that's part of it. I suppose also is looking at as I do at the profile of the workforce currently, we have an awful lot of people who will be coming to the end of their careers. So we need to be very mindful that we've got new people coming through. So that's sort of the medium to long term that we know we'll be able to recruit. So I think, you know, not just from a regional perspective, but I think from a local perspective, I've got, you know, that's where my weather eye is really. So I think, you know, it's useful. So that if we do go out to advert, we'll get applicants, you know. And that's not the same everywhere. I've got to be, you know, clear about that.
Thank you. My initial interest is working with the Bevan Commission. A fact I quoted people is in the next 10 years we're only going to have about half the required number of general practitioners in South Wales Valleys. Where are our doctors going to come from? We have a vast group of talented young people who are not used. And it's just nurturing them, bringing them forward, and they will be our future medical, nursing, therapy workforce, carers workforce. We just need to engage at an earlier stage and lead the way, show them how to do it. Lots of young people lack aspiration, they lack confidence, and I'm speaking as someone from the Welsh Valleys. I know what I was like and my friends are like, and it's to break barriers down, break glass ceilings down to enable people to develop themselves at an appropriate pace. And I think this is a fantastic concept which will allow us to do that.
Perfect, thank you. We do have a number of questions, so we'll move on then to question 2, if I can ask Rose to come in on that.
Chair, my question relates to 1.3. As RISCA was introduced in 2016, where are we with the current carer workforce registration, and what process is in place to check that the registration is taking place?
Okay. So in terms of RISCA, the requirement is for domiciliary care workforce to be registered by April 2020. And then following that, though we don't have a detailed time frame, there will be a requirement for residential care staff and potentially for advocates and others to become registered. So we've held a number of regional workshops, most recently in February, where we've been collating sort of what sort of some of the fears and concerns are. And I think I actually included as an appendix a bit of a breakdown in terms of how ready people felt going across with providers. So we are encouraging and have a number of local providers who are already going through the registration process. And in fact, a couple of those providers are actually on the consortium group, as I recall, Mirrors as an example are there. So they are sort of sharing some of that experience of going through the process and trying to demystify it. And I think it's also fair to say that the college have already indicated that if there's any support they could give in terms of providing a place and some support around some of that training, then they're very happy to do so.
There's been a lot of concern, I think, from particularly the domiciliary workforce about this, and there's a balance between trying to get over the fact that it actually enhances the status of the workforce, but a lot of the people feel they're concerned about the implications, but actually, you know, I think it does put regulation around it. It is needed, you know, but I think it enhances it for them. But there's a fear, isn't there, in terms of, I'm just a home care worker, why do I need this? But actually, we need it because we need to improve the status, and it all adds to the things we're trying to do in terms of recruitment and retention into this workforce. It enhances the status of this workforce. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Keith, you know, coming through the workforce, and when NVQs were introduced, I was also part of the Children's Partnership when registration of playgroups, and there is a fear there, and that's what you need to get over, and I think if we can promote it in a way that, you know, it, as you just commented, it enhances and it helps bring the stature of the care service into the highlights, into the thing. My next question is, again, related to 1.3. Is the new registration system deterring pupils from taking care courses and professions in the care sector?
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is no. We're certainly not seeing a decrease in the amount of learners that are coming forward wanting to come on our courses. As we've already said, the challenge is to ensure that the learners that come on the courses then go on to work in the local industry. So that's the challenge for us. Whether the new legislation and registration may affect that, I don't know, but I wouldn't expect so, because we've got an opportunity to talk to our learners, to raise their skill levels and ensure they're ready to be registered and take appropriate roles in the industry. So I can't see it being a problem.
We've not seen any direct evidence of that for new entrants. The worries are from the existing workforce who are concerned about having to go through the process, and there is obviously a route for people to register through grandmother rights, as it were. If they've worked for more than 3 years within the sector, they can get approval through their own management, but they will eventually have to register. But it's about trying to give people more time and opportunity to do that and demystify the process. But we're not seeing an issue, I don't think, it's not being overtly indicated as a recruitment issue.
Is there a cost to registration?
Yes.
There is. I can't remember what the actual figure is, but there is a cost. And the debate we're having about who's going to bear that cost, yeah, so that is a debate that's going on across the 5 councils at the moment in Gwent. Yeah. Because, you know, if it's passed on to the individual, then, you know, it impacts their lowly paid anyway. So we are having a look at that and how we can help with it.
Yes, and I think it's also fair to say that, you know, that feedback has been given to Social Care Wales.
Yeah.
You know, so initially the levels of registration are, I think, in the order of £15
Yeah,
a year.
yeah.
So it's not huge, but obviously we're conscious it could be an issue. And that's one of the things that we're looking at exploring, whether there may be opportunities to assist in particular circumstances through the kind of Bridges into Work.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of the partnership we've established is, of course, we can all attract, all have access to different funding streams. So we have been looking with some colleagues around the opportunities to see whether we could grant fund the registration fee. Emma?
Hiya. Looking at paragraph 1.4, are there any workforce representatives on the consortium, for example carers, and are there any gaps in the membership that you would like to see filled?
I think there probably are some gaps, if I'm honest. We haven't got any carers at present. I'll perhaps try and explain how we've tried to connect up some of the things. We do have a number of providers. I think there are 3 domiciliary care providers. We've also very much taken the case, and I think my colleagues would agree with me, that we're actually very keen to draw in people. We're not excluding people. So, for example, we've had some opening discussions with other FE colleges. But what we've looked to do is to ensure that this work is also reported to our regional citizen panel that meets every 5 or 6 weeks. In fact, the last meeting was Monday. And also our regional provider forum. So, if you like, we're trying to make sure that word about this is being shared more widely. But, yeah, I think we probably could do with getting a few more kind of citizen carer representatives if there are people interested. Yeah.
Would you look at maybe looking at service user feedback then, so looking at people with, you know, say for instance, people with learning disabilities who might, you know, have an input in something like this?
Yes, certainly. I think we've certainly had, we're doing quite a lot. It's a different matter, I know, but we're doing quite a lot. In fact, it's actually taking place at the same time. Regional Citizen Advocacy Forum, where we actually have had a lot of very close engagement with citizens, including people with learning disabilities, very much to shape what they want to see. So I think we've got some means that we could learn from to bring into this. We certainly wouldn't rule it out. No.
I think, just to say, this has almost been an organic process, hasn't it? I think some of it started with Paul and I having a conversation about delayed transfers of care and the impact that has when people can't get in for surgery, and a very stark message that they die. And then there's been other conversations we've had about all these young people that go in to this to college and then they don't actually arrive in, you know, in a caring destination. So, you know, it's early days, I think, you know, but I'm not making excuses. I just think it will grow, and we're learning all the time, aren't we? We're just saying that we keep ideas popping up about how we can make it better and get out and promote it, you know, going into schools, hosting students in councils, in the health board, you know, so they're hooked in from the beginning. I even joked about it with a group of children from Blenheim Road School. I offered them an application form, you know, but, you know, and I think that's how we've got to do it, you know. That was the launch of the Billy book, you know.
Yeah, I think you've just touched on my next question, Keith. When was the consortium established, and how many meetings have been held to date, and what work has been done to date? So where are we with the consortium?
Okay. I think there were informal discussions for about a year, actually. It took a while, but I think it was October that we formally, end of September last year, that we formally started meeting. We actually meet about every 4-6 weeks.
Yes, we've been meeting very regularly.
Very dynamic agenda, very fast-moving agenda, and it's actually, as we've already hinted, it's been a joy to attend the meetings, really.
I think the first meeting, it was obvious from, there was a lot of excitement around the table, and, people weren't there chasing grants and money. There was a genuine feeling that we need to do something, and that we can do something about this. So I think there was a certain energy, that when we got together, and we were able to get the chequebook out as it happened, which of course really does help.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Fine.
Hi. Is that on? Yeah. We've already touched on 2-1, and we've touched on this subject. I wonder if we could go into it in a little more detail. 300 plus undertake the health and social care course. Have we taken a step back to analyse why they choose the course if there's lack of intention to pursue a career in care? Because that seems to happen a lot, doesn't it? And the second part is, what other avenues are open to someone studying a care course? I believe there's quite a lot of avenues, isn't there?
I would be interested, as I say, I've been engaged with Coleg Gwent through Keith and his colleagues, and talking about Torfaen, I think with the 4 campuses of Coleg Gwent, is nearly 1,000 young people doing health and social care. That's a sort of availability of talent we've got in that area, and from my perspective, we don't know what happens with them at the moment. And we know that we will have terrible problems with workforce in health, most certainly, as is already going to happen with care. And we should be more integrated, and we look at other ways we could use these people. And even as a platform, I've got a passion for getting more local people into medicine. People have to show evidence of caring to gain access to medical school, for example. We're a fantastic way of doing it, and it gives young people a source of income. Studying is not an easy option nowadays in terms of financial considerations as well. It all fits in with things like this.
I think also picking up on your point, we one of the things we've talked about is we actually need to be speaking to the current cohorts of students as to what brought you in here, what are you looking for, etc. Because we haven't really been able we haven't really got as full a picture as we would like by any means. I think that's fair to say.
It's definitely fair to say, and you would think it would be quite easy to get destination data. Actually, it's quite difficult because what we want to know is where are learners a year after they've left the college, and how do we contact them? Do they get back to us? It's proved incredibly difficult to collect that data. But clearly, we need to improve our information gathering to improve our quality of that data. One of the issues for me is also the amount of learners that do leave during their course. Why are they leaving? What are the issues there? There are barriers in this area that people perceive as preventing them to going into an employment. And one of the things we have been starting to discuss is, what are those barriers and what are we going to do to make sure that we can reduce those barriers so more people can stay on the courses that they want to be on, and we can then be sure that they can progress and go into employment.
And one other small point just to add is that we know that hence the almost expansion of this project looking towards schools, because we know it's actually what people are told in schools, the information they get, that will actually influence their applying for such a course. So we need to make sure that people are making the right choices in terms of the subjects that they study. This is one of the things that has already been flagged by Paul in particular. We need to give people the right information, so that they don't make a wrong choice. If they really want to become a nurse, or then the advice from a nurse needs to be, these are the sorts of things to focus on.
Talking about keeping things local, when you get past college, are we looking at keeping in touch with higher education in our area, at university, for instance? Because I know that a lot of young people have gone out to study in England and universities that are further into Wales and are not in our part of the world, and then probably go on to get jobs in the caring system or, in medical things which are not based within South Wales.
Personal perspective. I have a role as honorary senior lecturer of Cardiff Medical School, and I do a lot of work in respect of that, and I sit in the admissions group to admit students to the medical school, and I also work at the University of South Wales as well in other aspects of health and hopefully social care for that engagement.
Yeah, I suppose. And the workforce teams across Gwent you know, in the 5 authorities, all keep in touch with the courses that are run specifically for care in the university, so the social work courses. And we host most of those students between the 5 authorities, and obviously we try to get them to come and work for us. We offer placements, and you know, many come and do a placement and they stay with us. So so we do that, but that's a very sort of local. We don't follow people into the universities in England. We do the ones in Wales. Yeah.
I was just going to add that our partnership model really is a model whereby we are promoting work experience opportunities and thereby giving local people more opportunity to experience what it's like to work in local industry, and hopefully more will stay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just a commentary. I've been banging on a few years since the local health board, or Torvine Local Health Board, actually made the decision to apply for the critical care centre, and what an opportunity that is to actually increase the care sector in lots of areas, not only the care sector, the engineering sector and everything else that goes in with a large general hospital. And I wondered whether or not we're looking at carers in this particular instance, but is there a bigger picture looking at what is required for future critical care hospitals, and particularly in our borough?
I met with Geraint Evans, who leads for workforce in Erin Bevan last week. I've got another meeting set up with him with Social Care Wales and Health Improvement Wales to look at those. And we are talking about the broader employment, because the hospital brings threats as well as opportunities, because it will pull from other workforces. I mean, it's a good thing where it is, and it's going to be an excellent centre, but it's going to have a number of effects, I think, in terms of employment locally. And I am being a bit parochial here, because we think we may lose home carers as healthcare assistants into the hospital. So we're doing a bit of work. We're doing a lot of work with them about that, and a dialogue about what we can do to safeguard the workforce locally, but also to promote it, because it's a good thing as well, isn't it? It's going to bring employment in, and some high-level employment, not just basic employment.
On a wider aspect, so the Health Board and colleague Gwent have had discussions about any occupation which might be used to give employment by the Health Board and for the Health Board, including things like plumbers, electricians, anything at all we can engage with.
Good.
And as a college, we're looking to address the regional statements of needs and priorities and LSCIP priorities. So what we're looking to do, in fact we are doing it, is we're setting up career college partnerships, not only in care, but also in engineering, construction and IT, which are the other 3 priority areas. So we're looking to build on some of the expertise we're developing currently and really move forward in a much bigger way.
Perfect. Thank you. Some excellent answers there. We will move on then. We're going to look at 2.1 and we'll ask Mike to come in on that.
So, registration, DBS checks and driving licences, putting people off who wish to pursue a career in caring?
Currently, and for the last 5 years or more, learners who come to college have to pay for their own DBS checks. There are grants and systems in college to support to support students who require financial assistance. We're not aware of any specific examples of where this has been a barrier, because we generally do sit down with learners if they identify it as a financial barrier to overcome that particular problem.
We know, just to pick up the other point you made, we do know from direct conversation that the issue about driving is a serious one in terms of people coming into work. I've certainly spoken to young people, not just young people, sort of people in the 20s and 30s who have they're in a slight catch-22. They need to get a job to be able to pay to learn to drive, but they can't get the job because they need to be able to drive. So there are no easy fixes around this. What we are trying to do is sort of see what sort of the opportunities that may be in terms of things like the bridges into work, in terms of if that's a barrier, if there's an opportunity that can support that. We've got 1 or 2 care providers who have arrangements whereby they actually pay for driving lessons for member of staff and they can pay it back out of salary. So what we're trying to do is gauge, if you like, what's happening across the piece and see if we can actually spread some good practice. But it's not an easy one. One care provider has highlighted how much it costs them in terms of the insurance around their fleet vehicle, if you like, and it's staggeringly expensive, and their premiums do not go down. They always go up, even if they've got a clean bill of health.
I don't know where your partnership is with the Gwent Police, but they used to do a young driver course, and obviously if you qualified for a young driver course with the police, your insurance is slightly cheaper, and I wondered whether or not there's opportunities there that you might have conversations with, that they do a young driver course in a specific area, and therefore that's on offer.
We can pick that up, Rose. I'm not aware that that exists anymore. It's probably one of the things that no longer happens due to their sort of budget. But we can ask the question. Certainly, you know, in the past we've put young people that were being looked after through driving lessons, because we know it's, you know, you can get a job if you can drive very often, and so we've done that in the past.
Hi, I think you've already answered some of my questions, and it's really good to hear that some employers are looking at covering insurance costs. But if you're using your car to work, then you need business insurance. Are employers looking at covering at least the business insurance element?
We haven't had that debate with them, to be honest, Joe. I think we are beginning to talk to them about the need for cars and car usage. We're also talking to them, certainly again, being a bit parochial in Torfaen, about our patch-based models, where actually you don't need a car, you just need to get to the area, and you can do some buddying or something. Or we've even talked about pool cars to do some of that. So but we operate different models across the authorities. Some of them are very rural, aren't they? And obviously you will need a car. But we are having those conversations because the home care workforce is critical to our business. And again, it's very critical to the conversation I had earlier about getting people out of hospital. They have to have a package of care to come out, so we need to be able to get the carers there. So it's a dialogue, but of course it's a problem because, whining on about it, nobody's got a lot of money these days, so it is a problem.
One of the things we have done, it came up in conversation in one of our meetings, was actually about, could you look at providing bikes, for example, easy access to bikes for people? So that's one we've picked up on. I've been in touch with Changing Gears, arranged a meeting. We're actually looking at getting a transport group together. But we're open to looking at all of these kind of things. I think that the provision of bikes is, may work in some places. We're really genuinely open to try and explore things. So if people have made a suggestion like that, we're following it up.
Do we actually have figures for the number of students who actually complete the courses?
That's data we do have. We know how many students start the course, we know how many students finish, and we also know how successful they are. And just off the top of my head, we are looking at 19 out of every 20 students who come on the course gaining a qualification, which is a pretty high figure, really.
And of those courses, is it mainly classroom-based, or is there a work experience element to each of them?
Majority of the courses have a work experience element, yeah.
You're currently planning further courses. Where are these courses going to be located, and are any of them taking place at the new sixth form college to be opened in Cwmbran?
Very topical question. And it's obviously fine to ask. The current curriculum that's being offered at the Pontypool campus of Coleg Gwent, in terms of the health and social care curriculum, it's all being transferred to the new campus in Cwmbran. And of course the college has 3 other key campuses in Newport, Crosskeys and Blaenau Gwent, who also offer health and social care courses. So what's currently on offer in the college will continue to be on offer for a number of years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thinking of training then, is training provided to new carers on how to deal with death?
I think that will vary on who the employer is. I think in terms of the council's carers, we would have some training on dealing with bereavement and loss. You know, I couldn't say how many access it, you know, but we would have it. Have to talk to the workforce group to find out whether it's offered across all of the. I mean, training's open to everybody. It's not just the council, but it's the take-up is patchy from some of the other providers. You know, there's a whole issue around time to release people and payment and so on. But interestingly, I attended a safeguarding board yesterday and we had a presentation about a very serious situation where someone had taken their own life and how the carers had been left for a year while the police investigation took place, you know, without any input from anybody. And I think what came out was that they felt responsible for the death. They weren't at all responsible for it, but nobody had had the conversation with them. So I think there was some learning there. So I think it is something that came out of the safeguarding board yesterday, that we need to look at what training and support we offer people in either residential, nursing homes or care settings, hospitals, you know, police, you know, people who have direct access to the public where there's a serious incident, or people just die. We do it with our own staff, you know, working with a lot of elderly people, our social workers would have some training in that, but it's not across the piece.
Even in health, I look after a lot of very junior doctors and medical students. There's no real formal teaching for such things. It's experience and experiential learning, really. And leading that further, my daughter's worked as a carer, and we've had such conversations. And it's a very individual thing how people are going to cope with that anyway. So I think didactic teaching is a bit of a difficult thing, personally.
The majority of the content of the courses is nationally prescribed as well, and we're just entering a period of massive change in the way that the content of the courses is being devised to meet, obviously, changing technologies and changing practices. But one of the benefits of our current partnership is we have a curriculum subgroup, and so we are able to look at some local issues and look at demands. And so as a college we have been looking at training in particular in dementia and first aid for mental health. So those are two areas. I think the benefit of our partnership gives us possibilities that we wouldn't have had if we didn't work in this way. So we can look at some of these areas and say, what's the need for this type of training? How can we actually get together and deliver it?
So bereavement is one stress that carers face, but there's many stresses really, isn't there? You know, working with the relatives can be stressful, all the health and safety practices with moving and handling. So I think you've already touched on it a little bit, but could you go further and tell me more about how you support our carers to be healthy so that their well-being is high?
I can speak for the council as an employer and how we would support our carers. So our carers would all receive regular support and supervision. There'd be a debrief if something significant had happened on their caseload. It's the same as we would do in terms of professionally qualified staff. If there's a serious incident, we offer support and supervision. That's why we always like to know that our staff return home safely, in case there is an incident, and we've got mechanisms in place for that. But outside of the council, all of the agencies that we contract with will have their own arrangements. And this is probably posing questions we need to ask, to be honest, about some of that. Because, we have individual contracts with agencies, and, they will offer support and supervision, but whether or not they're formally trained in it, I don't know. So, it's a useful two-way process, this, because I'm noting some things to take to the workforce board. What are we asking about this, and where it's available, what's the take-up,
One thing I could add to this is that the Carers Regional Partnership, which is one of the 5 partnerships under the Regional Partnership Board, had a presentation on employers for carers at the last meeting. That then came to the last leadership group, and there was support from the Health Board and the local authorities to take up an umbrella membership. So we're in the process of exploring that at the moment. It's kind of a live issue, and so I can't say, definitely, but the presentation went very well, and I think the Health Board and the local authorities recognised we need to be identifying and supporting our own staff who are carers, and we need to look at how we do that. And so it's starting to be picked up, as best I can say.
Yeah, thank you. Just from me on that one, I think that was one of the more important topics we discussed yesterday, to make sure that the carers we are trying to recruit in have an avenue to perhaps talk about bereavements where they've built up relationships with the people they care for. Especially at such a young age, we want to address the mental well-being of these people as well as the physical and everything else. So moving on slightly from that one then, we'll go on to question 15, please.
Is there a designated carer pay structure, and do pay scales increase with experience? Any mileage costs? Now, I know that in the end, in the Health Board, we've got bandings for, support workers and care workers, HCAs and that. Is there going to be a similar sort of pay structure within, the carers?
Again, in terms of the local authority, obviously there is a pay structure, and any mileage and stuff is covered. We pay people's mileage for work. This is a debate we have constantly with the independent and private sector, because they differ, but we're talking to them about how we can work on individual contracts, and one of the things we've been very clear about, where we're having additional monies coming in from Welsh Government, we're ensuring it is passported onto the carers rather than going into the organisation. But as David said earlier, we need a more sophisticated look at some of their costs, because I think some of them are hidden and they soak up, like the cost of insurance. How do we calculate that in the hourly rate we are paying people? And I think we need to do that. We've got a very sophisticated model for doing it for residential and nursing care. We have a fees policy and a structure to do that. But for the domiciliary market, it's probably less sophisticated. But I think going forward, we all know we've got to do something about this, because this is part of the workforce. It's critical. And
we're talking about, we've got the initial education of carers, and as they progress with their career and they gain more training, more experience, it was thinking about maybe reflecting their experience and their skills within that pay structure.
I think the way we're envisaging it, and colleagues can come in if they think I'm wrong, we're seeing it as a career pathway. So people could start out maybe as a home carer or a carer in a residential home, but they could then progress to be a healthcare assistant and then maybe a nurse or an OT. So we're seeing it as a career pathway, so that eventually, starting from a basic carer, which are invaluable, we couldn't run our service without those, but that people can eventually progress to more senior jobs if they wish to do it. Some people don't. They want to stay hands-on care. That's what they've come in to do. But other people, and again, I said 30% of the workforce in social care started in other types of jobs and have progressed and are now social workers or managers. So there is that. So I think that's how we see it, more as a career pathway rather than, does that...
2.4, are the providers in Torfaen fully aware and equipped for the changes?
As far as we can is really the only way I can answer that. What we've done is we have put on training events. So I'll use an example. We did last year in Gwent, we had an expo event which was around recruitment, which was held down in the Riverfront Theatre. We had a very good footfall, about 115 people coming through. We had stands from Social Care Wales, etc., and we had some presentations, one of which was on value-based recruitment and retention of staff. Not picked up by Social Care Wales so far, so it was Skills for Care England. Social Care Wales actually saw that and said, well, actually, we think this is actually something we should be encouraging and supporting. So this year, they've run an event in every single region in Wales, building on the work we did last year. Our event was so well subscribed, that we negotiated doing a second event for providers, which in fact is going to be held next week. So I think what we're trying to do is make sure we build the relationship with providers to ensure that we're picking up what their concerns are and their training needs, and then responding to it.
Thinking of looking at 3.3, at what level can the consortium influence the content of training courses?
It's quite difficult for us to influence the national qualifications. Clearly there are mechanisms for us to input into that content and the assessment and how the courses are run. It's really for us to locally determine which parts of a particular curriculum meet the needs of the local people, because we do have a choice in terms of some of the specialisms that we wish to choose. So we can actually tailor a nationally prescribed curriculum to some extent to meet local need. But as I mentioned before, I think one of the benefits is we can look at short courses, we can look at short training courses, particularly for people already working in the industry, and we can, to a major extent, influence the content of those to make sure it meets local need.
Gwent as well, they're in interest in generating a future medical workforce, for example. We know many young people just don't get the required A-level grades to get to medical school, and they are absolutely capable. It's outside their control. So we've identified that, and working with Coleg Gwent and working with Cardiff Medical School, we hopefully will produce a course through Coleg Gwent for an access to medicine course, where young people might not have the traditional A-level requirements, but if they are successful in this course, which will be developed in conjunction with the medical school, they will be interviewed for medical school. So that we can influence things like that through Coleg Gwent, hopefully as well.
Thank you. You just answered part of my question, but there might be more information, so I'll still ask. Are there any other changes that you have in mind that you are planning to make to local training?
Well, I think the short answer to that is no. I mean, what we really want to do, this is a very emerging agenda, really, and as I say, we've set up a curriculum subgroup of our current partnership specifically to look at training needs and how can we be responsive. And we're doing an awful lot of work currently on mapping the broad range of training programmes. It's very confusing to a lot of us, really, to see all the training programmes that are out there, which ones are relevant, which ones are up to date and provide a real valid experience. So we're just going through a programme of assessing all of those training programmes. Where are there gaps? What do we need to do to fill those gaps? Can we do it ourselves? So it's work in hand.
Just supplementary. Obviously, there are people attending medical training school from our sixth form schools at the moment. We have one in Comrade High School. And are you linking with the sixth forms before they're going transfer over into the college to see the work that they're actually doing at the moment and lessons that you can learn from?
Absolutely. It's something we actually haven't done in a structured way before, and the opportunity presents itself now with the new college in Cwmbran for us to work far more closely with the schools, not just with the sixth form, but even at the lower levels too, because one of the initial comments was, how can we ensure that young people in schools get more information about a career opportunity in health and social care and healthcare. So we can do an awful lot more with the schools. There's some big opportunities. We need to do a lot more.
Has the consortium approach been tried in other parts of the country, or is this the first that you're aware of?
We're not aware of it being done elsewhere. We've shared some of the experience with Cardiff and Vale, and also Western Bay. But again, my assessment of it would be that they are still exploring it in a way that we've actually started to do it. And there's no judgment on anybody. But
I think Deb has been very modest here. I think we're cutting edge on this. I actually do. I'm not going to be modest. I think, we've put a lot of energy into this, and I think others can learn from it. And to be honest, this is being webcast, so I need to be careful. We took a view that we weren't going to wait for national government and agencies to address this, that we would get on the front foot and do something about it. And I think others will learn from what we've done in the Gwent region.
Fantastic to hear. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. You've given us some feedback on the March the 7th event. Can you provide further detail on the We Care campaign?
Yes, this was embargoed until the 4th. There's information now available, and what I would suggest to people is if you look up We Care online, Google it, then you'll see the website and various information that's provided. We had some input from this region along with other regions, but I think it's fair to say that we were pretty consistent in being involved. So the approach rightly has been taken is that it's all real people doing real jobs, real carers, real agencies, and that's made very clear in the campaign. It is focused on social care and early years. One of our observations has been that, it was a shame it didn't spread further to include health as well, but, we understand perhaps some of the reasons for that. So it's actually some very good clips and things that have been made available. It's actually, if I say it's kind of neutral, so whilst it was developed through Social Care Wales and working with others, it's not badged as such. It can be badged by any organisation, and the clips and information can be used by any organisation in their own recruitment. So providers are encouraged to sign up so that they will actually be able to have information space, so that it won't be a jobs website, but it will actually point people to sort of, right, well, you can look up who are organisations in your area. That's where you go. You can look up those and find out about them. And that's what it's looking at, being a signposting tool for that as well. Very early days, because as I literally was just last week. And I have to say that our launch event with the Magic Moments went very well. We had 65 people there, mostly frontline staff, and we made it very clear we'd like to get some of your stories to be part of this campaign.
You said the event, Wiki, was useful, but there was also, you would also benefit by having another event to address issues. Are there any plans to hold such an event within Torfaen?
What we've tried to do is we've held a number of recruitment events. We are looking at going around the authorities, and in fact Torfaen should be next, because we had the first event I outlined to you at the Expo in Newport last July. We had an event in Caerphilly Library last November. We were at the Blaenau Gwent Ebbw College Gwent campus in February. So we are planning to do further events to make sure that every local authority area is covered.
Looking at 4.6, communication. So have there been other communication campaigns taking place besides the We Care? And if there has, when you're carrying out the campaigns, what forums are you using, thinking of the best forums to communicate with young people and with parents?
I think it's fair to say that this is a live discussion with the communications group. What we are finding is that, to be perfectly honest, it is actually trying to encourage people to work together. Because everybody's very busy in terms of the communications side. The We Care information went out to all the comms teams within the local authorities, the health board, etc. One of the things that we set up, which was actually very helpful for the recruitment events that I described, was we set up a regional partnership Facebook. And we actually found that we did exit interviews. You catch people as they're going out, you ask them a few questions. And it was clear that the majority of, certainly the younger people, that's where they'd found the information, on Facebook. So we have been using that Facebook page to sort of put up case studies, examples, the links to We Care. Some of the things, for example, the intergenerational event with Billy the Superhero being launched. So we are putting out quite a little bit of information, I think, now, and linking in with the with both local authority and health board and college websites.
I think experience would show that if you have the big bang events, they do bring an immediate response, and you've got to be quick to deal with that. But I think the other bit that we found generally in workforce, it's that drip, 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 continuous approach. So you need both. That would be my take on it. That you need to do. It needs to be multifaceted, doesn't it? It happens in various ways, and we all use opportunities to try and encourage. I was in a meeting. There were some young people, and I said, "Have you thought about a career in social care?" And gave them my details, and one of them rang me up, and is now looking at it. So I think we just got to do, use our own experiences and opportunities as well whenever we bump into people, or And I think, giving examples of there is a career. I've had parents saying, why would you want to be a social worker? Well, actually, there is a career. You're doing some good. You're giving back to the community. It's the same in medicine, isn't it, Paul? Very high-pressure jobs. You see it on the TV, working long hours at junior doctors, but it's a very worthwhile. And I think it often gets a negative press, doesn't it? I mean, when do you ever see anything in the paper, a good thing that a social worker's ever done? It's usually when something's gone wrong, So we've got to use other opportunities to do that, and I think that's what we'll do through this consortium. We'll try and improve the image. There's a very negative connotation given to some young people, isn't it? Well, you're not very bright, so have you thought about doing hairdressing or care? Well, actually, that's really bad. They're both valuable occupations, but it's given that negative connotation. And I think that's often given to parents who then influence,
Just want to say how lovely it is to hear your passion and your commitment.
Yeah, passion and commitment, isn't it? Absolutely. We're all, that's why we're doing these jobs, and that's why we've got together, because we know we've got to do something about it.
We've got the same concerns as councillors, when anything goes wrong, it's usually our fault.
You wouldn't expect me to comment on
that? No, I wouldn't, Keith, but there we are. My question is, do we know the split between the male and female carers and young carers? There are some male, and obviously the career path is open to a lot of male, but they don't think of it as starting in the beginning of their career pathway.
We actively promote the employment of male carers. I think there's a perception that some people wouldn't want a male carer. That isn't true. I worked as a male home help when I was very young, and actually, once you got over that initial barrier, and you find ways of helping people without it being intrusive. So I think and I've used that example to many people that I did it. And actually it's something you can do. You gain experience, you gain an insight into that world. So we do actively, if I speak to my home care manager here, she'd say, if you've got any male carers, push them our way, because we do need it. But it definitely is, the split is far more, I would think, female than male. Yeah.
And my point, there's a lot of young carers out there that are doing the job while they're trying to attend education as well, and they have the experience of caring that can actually start a career. But Keith, perhaps you'd like to come in on how we encourage.
I was going to say, a couple of points there. One, in terms of young carers, there are far more young carers in the college than I ever imagined. And it's trying to understand where they are and make them realise that we can work with them and support them, because we want to ensure the barriers to their own studies are as minimal as possible. So we've actually been working quite hard in the last 2 years in the college to find out who are our young carers and what can we do to help, and set up sort of support networks. We're also clearly, as a college, and we have done for many years, been actively promoting and working against some of the stereotypes that exist in society, really. What can we do to really promote careers for people in certain areas? And obviously care is a massive problem because the majority of our learners in this area are female. And we need to do more, and we are trying to do our best to do more to encourage more males.
If I could come in on a couple of things very quickly on this. First thing is that, you know, that's been picked up, and you'll see some good examples in the We Care promotions of male carers as well. We've been looking to capture some of those stories in sort of the Magic Moments event that we held on the 7th. In fact, Torvine Carer is one of those people who will be featured. And I've lost the thread of my last point, sorry. Those were the two examples that I really wanted to highlight. Oh, that's right, sorry. At the last recruitment event that we held at the Ebbw Vale College campus, it was notable that one provider had a lot more people coming to their stand. They had a young male carer there who was brilliant at engaging with those young people, and it really showed.
Thank you. I think it's worth, you know, probably highlighting your rise as well as a career that you've had from being a home carer to being a high-flying Torvine executive. It's, it might inspire some people, you never know. Moving on then to 410, please, Faye.
I hate to put anything negative on this discussion because I think it is all brilliant, but on 410 it says that crime and disorder, no negative impacts are envisaged. However, I did think there are going to be some carers who are going to be walking into certain situations in family homes and things where there might be drugs, violence, you know, criminals, and I just wonder what risk assessments we do and, you know, how we're going to sort of do safeguarding around those issues.
Well, any new situation that we would do as a risk assessment based on the information that we have at the time. But we would always advise, again, I'm speaking from a council perspective here, we would always advise any staff going out to be very diligent about what they were walking into, and if they felt unsafe, to leave those premises immediately and to ring into the office for support. If we think it's going to be difficult, we often send people out in pairs. So that, you know, they don't do a lone visit, because we do deal with people with complex issues, mental health, you know, and so on, domestic violence, coercive control, all those sort of scenarios. So we're very aware of that, and we do talk to our colleague providers about those scenarios as well. So, you know, people are cited on it, but, you know, within the council, we would say, you know, if you feel unsafe, get out of the situation and get in touch with the office and we'll get somebody out with you. Or we will go into an environment and say, we're not prepared to put somebody in here until this is tidied up, you know, if there's drugs, paraphernalia or what. And often, you know, that could be a situation where, sadly, we would remove people from that situation. So if we went in and it was a child, you know, we would make that situation safe by removing the child until such a time that things were put safe. So, you know, we are very on, you know, we're quite hot on that. I think one of my concerns there has always been, and I don't know if it's the over-reliance on mobile phones, that people think they could get in touch with it. And I always, you know, say, don't rely on that, because so in many areas of say, Torvine, they don't work. So you couldn't summon help. So, you know, it's about people being aware of what to do if they spot something. So, yeah.
Do we have many young lone carers? Because, you know, you see that as a bit of a danger. Their vulnerability, because they're young in some ways, and going out on your own. When you think of the Susie Lamplugh stuff, I mean, I know lots of workers go out on their own, but is there any legislation around that? Or
there's no legislation. I think all we're encouraged to do is do a risk assessment based on the information that we have at the time, but often that can be scant. You know, we'll get a referral and it's a couple of lines, but we still have to go out and have a look. But, you know, so we don't have a huge number of young carers. We have young staff, but, you know, they're usually, by the time they've been through some training, they understand the issues and, you know, they would know what to do in that event. And that's constantly reinforced with, you know, in terms of the support and supervision they get.
Okay, thank you for that. 5.3, there's a comment here that says the Career Consortium approach has the potential to be expanded beyond health. Could you just give us a bit of an overview as to what expansions you see coming?
I think we've touched on this a little because obviously we talked about some of the associated trades in relation to the hospital, because that's been a subject of conversation, hasn't it, Paul, that's come up. And I think Keith has also would acknowledge that, you know, some of what we've been trying to do with the consortium here could actually roll across to other courses and things, but I think better ask other colleagues to come in on that.
It's making our students in the college aware that there are careers in health and social care if they're interested in finance or IT, and they rarely do think of these things. They think, okay, I'm training to be a finance manager, I'm going to work in wherever, you know, and so it's really about us promoting the opportunities, and I think that's the partnership we're setting up to do exactly that.
On 5.4, you say you have a partnership plan is going forward. Can you give us an update as to what the actual partnership plan is, please?
Yes, you know, this is essentially something that we share across all the partners so that everybody's aware of the different streams of work, and we update that at each meeting, essentially, because it is quite fast-moving. And part of what we've been trying to do is, I suppose the best way I can describe this is actually trying to share information across all the partners. I don't know how colleagues would wish to comment on that, but it's also so that we can demonstrate some evidence. We set some targets to get things done by. I think, as we've alluded to, this is quite fast-moving. We are meeting quite regularly. We are putting a bit of pressure on ourselves to try and do things fairly quickly, I think, you know, looking at colleagues. I'd have to ask colleagues for their perspective on that as well.
I completely endorse that. It's also keeping us on track. It'd be so easy for us to get diverted into a whole range of other issues. But we've got some key agenda items here we're trying to address, and to me that's the importance of the work plan.
Which are not going to go away.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We move on now then to the final stage, which is the appendix, which is the survey results. I'll ask Rose to come in.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, who designed the survey and sent it out? And if this was an all-Wales survey, and why the response levels were so low? And I'll follow on with my next question. Why were there no respondents from Children's Services?
Well, dealing with the first one, the last one first, we were specifically going out to adult providers and not children, so we didn't actually survey any children's services. But we were conscious that some providers provide both children's and adult services, so they have the opportunity to comment. This was a Gwent-only survey that was done just in terms of when I described some of our regional workshops. This was one of the things that came out from one of those regional workshops, was actually surveying those providers within Gwent. So when we actually look at that breakdown of our providers in Gwent, that's actually quite a significant number of the total, you know, dom care and residential care providers. So it was a voluntary return. But it was actually trying to get some intelligence about exactly the sort of thing you've asked about, how ready and prepared and able people felt in terms of being, you know, for the process that was coming in. And that was very helpful then to sort of see the breakdown. Right, so this was done by the regional team, working with each of the commissioning bodies within the local authorities. And we got the returns. I think we had a fairly tight deadline to turn things around within 2 weeks. So we were actually very pleased with the numbers who responded.
Looking at the second table there, we've got a combined response of 44% that either are not aware or do not understand what the AWIF means to them. That seems a pretty high percentage, so what are we going to do to address that?
Okay. perhaps I should put this in the context that this survey was done in November of last year, in the run-up to our preparing the workshops. I referred to one coming up now. So, if you like, it was actually helping us to understand how we pitched these workshops, you know, how much basic information people might need. So it was really to prepare us for delivering the workshops. Does that help you? I should have made that clear in terms of the context.
And final question of the day from Mike.
Are there further supports on workshops proposed?
Yes. I think we've referred to that. Yeah. Well, we have, as I say, the next. There's basically a programme of workshops, and what we're doing is we're working nationally with Social Care Wales. So, for example, there is the new Health and Social Care framework. What's it called? Organisation Development Plan, which HEIW and Social Care Wales are taking forward. There's a regional event in each region. We are the last on the 8th of June, but we know there'll be a lot more. You know, it's a very busy time in terms of arranging sessions and workshops, and I've been amazed at just how many we as a regional team have been involved with in the last 3 months. You know.
I'm also meeting, as I said earlier, with Social Care Wales, Health Inspectorate Wales and the health boards around workforce issues. So there's a lot of activity going on around it.
Points to just mop up, really. What's the name of your Facebook page?
Top of my head, I can't tell you, but I can make sure you get it.
I'm sure members would like to,
have
a little look. My usual question, are there any gaps, and how can elected members help you fill those gaps?
Well, speaking first, I think there's been some helpful suggestions made, and as Keith has referred to, we've made a note of a few of those things, linked with the police, for example, and making sure that we're actually communicating and seeing if there's any interest from carers and practitioners. We're certainly looking forward to the fact that once we get this employment officer post in place, we'll be able to do a lot of the things we're planning to do, because we will have a body on the ground to do some of that. And certainly one of the things we want to pick up on is the current student experience and what they're interested in, what brought them in, so we start to get a bit more of that baseline. That's me, but... You know.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
I think it's just the awareness, really, that you're aware of what's happening, and then if help is required, it'd be lovely to engage specifically for specific tasks where people might have more expertise.
When we do the local events, if members have got time to come, that might be helpful as well, if people could drop into the local events, so we'll make sure that you are aware of them. You know, and yeah, we need to do a bit more of that, I think, you know, because we do lots of things, and I'm not sure how good we are at promoting those with members.
And I keep saying this, but members have access to lots of community groups and Facebook pages and community websites and things, and you know, the promotion isn't just meant to be retained within our offices. The more you spread the word, the further it goes. So lots of members have their own communication processes that we can help with. So.
I mean, I think any opportunity members have got to promote the career in care is you know, when you're talking to constituents or the young people in your areas about it, you know, because we know there are pockets, aren't there, where there are significant areas of unemployment, and you know, some of those young people could actually become good carers, you know, and begin a career. And, you know, as I said earlier, it's about the sustainability of the community as well, isn't it? About bringing money back in and, you know, doing your shopping locally. And if you've got a job, you can do that.
Just to say that we're all passionate about the roles of carers, and we think that in the public eye, it's really they're undervalued. And really, you know, we are passionate on getting people into this sector, but also ensuring that they are treated with due care.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. That ends the questioning session. Excuse me. I think it's worth highlighting that each of your individual leadership around the issue and your collective leadership is putting Torfaen on the front foot, and that's fantastic to see. I'm always pleased when we're kind of flying the flag and others are following us. So thank you very much for each of your contributions today. As members, we'll ask you now to stay on for the scrutiny session, but if we have a 5-minute break in between, and we say thank you and cheerio to the team. Thank you. Right, moving on then, thank you members. We'll go on now to the scrutiny activity, and I'll ask Becky just to run through that, and then we'll make the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. So as you'll see there from the suggested scrutiny activity, the Healthier Committee are invited to scrutinise the report and determine whether the proposed initiatives and actions will contribute to achieving a sustainable workforce in the social care sector, and whether you would like to provide any recommendations or proposals for further areas for development to the Executive Member for Social Care and Housing. So do you want to take the first part there first? Are you happy that all the proposed initiatives and actions will contribute to achieving a sustainable workforce going forward?
I just feel really energised and thrilled by the fact that these people are all working together and they've got this great idea to help increase this profile on care. And I just think I feel very proud of living in Torfaen at the moment. You know, before we go into it in detail, I'm just wondering if we could note that at all.
Absolutely, yeah. It was very difficult, to be honest, to pull out some proposed recommendations because they seem to have everything covered. But just 1 or 2 points. Dr Edwards did raise the point about need for greater emphasis on engagement earlier and when they're younger, because there's a great deal of lack of aspiration and confidence amongst our young people. So whether you wanted to recommend something around that. Also, you raised the issue of the cost of registration. Keith did mention that is being looked at by the 5 authorities at the moment. So whether you wanted to recommend something along looking at potential funding streams to help, vulnerable people or young people with that, to help, certain groups of people that may need financial assistance. Councillor Raper, you mentioned about representatives on the consortium, and they did say there were gaps with citizen and carer representation, so I don't know whether members want to recommend that they look to fill those gaps. And then with regards to the communications campaigns, Councillor Gordon, you raised the issues about making sure they're in the appropriate forums, dealing more with younger groups and parental groups, and also that they send any further dates to you as members so that you can be involved perhaps in any future events or get those messages out to anyone who may want to go along to those events. And then just 2 action points, not recommendations. Keith said he would email the Facebook link, so I'll share that with members. And also, if there's any dates, imminent dates, I'll get those out to members as well. Yes. Okay.
I think there's also an opportunity. I did mention the police with the driving, but I mean our forces. There's no more care involved in the fire service when they are, you know, and I think they should link with the police and the fire service in asking for contributions to how things can be better done. I mean, the police commissioner has a funding pot that he asks for every year, and what better to cover the driving of young people and the learning and the promotion into the service as having a fund from the commissioner to do that job. I'm sorry that young driver scheme has actually ceased, and I think for the safety of our young people to start with, and not only that, to go into the careers that need driving, I think that should be a recommendation that they link with.
They did say that in 2020 they hope that they will have more carers registered, but they did say that they need to look at more registration going forward, and I just wondered, did they have a time scale for that after 2020 when they were going to look at some regulation and making it more across the band and taking it further?
Pop that in as an action point then and see that information from them and pass it on to you.
Question was, is it possible give them a career in the borough? You know, we fund them, and yet we still have the benefit of them having a full-time job within the council, and therefore, then, isn't it?
Good idea, caring apprenticeship. Yeah.
Just highlight what Janet just said, but I know that with the Welsh Government, when they fund the nursing bursary, for instance, because we've still got the nursing bursary in Wales, you are obliged to stay here in Wales to work 3 years after you've trained. So
yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. If we can offer bursary to a few of them.
Something that can...
And then similar to Councillor Raper, that they work then for the council for...
That has actually been introduced in this authority as far as social workers are concerned. So we pay for their training and what have you, and there's an agreement that they work so long in our social services, so that there's a recruitment and retention scheme already happening in social care. So to bring it lower, I think that would be a lot easier for us to do.
And as Keith said, it's some of our carers are getting possibly towards the pensionable age, and it's a soma that we will have a recruitment in hand already.
The one I picked up on was the tracking of students coming in and going out.
Yeah. And drop.
But apart from that, that's the only one I really picked up, and I don't think we should be looking to make work for recommendations when none exist. Sometimes the scrutiny, you've got to put your hands up and say good job, and that's yeah.
I think they're a long way to providing the service we can hope
Yeah.
Of an aspiration for that group, or for somebody who takes over from that group, could they put together a well-being package for carers? You know, so there's looking at safeguarding, looking at perhaps access to a counsellor where needed, looking at training being brought up to scratch in private companies as well as within Torfaen.
Wrong agenda. No, I've got it. Okay then, so we can finish on that, and we'll look for the date of the next meeting, which we're looking at Thursday, the 2nd of May 2019. And Becky, go through the agenda.
Thank you. With members' permission, I am currently discussing with the Chair and with Chief Officers the most appropriate item to go to the next committee. There are only a couple of items left in your basket, so it's about which is the most timely for your next meeting. So once we've confirmed that, I will drop an email to the rest of the committee and with a report pro forma for you to confirm. Thank you.
All right, thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you.